Welcome to the Ugly Podcast. I'm your host, Lauren Alexander, she, they, and this is the place where creatives are encouraged to make messy, ugly art and let go of perfectionism. I started this podcast with my creative partner, Emerson, and we've since grown into our businesses, and this podcast is now evolving into a space where I interview other creatives to discuss our creative processes and how we navigate the mental minefield of creativity. This podcast serves as a reminder that you and your art get to be whatever the hell you want to be, ugly and all. Hello, everybody. Welcome back to the Ugly Podcast. Today, I have a guest, a fellow editor who is an awesome person. And we're going to talk a little bit about creating for yourself, first and foremost, because so many of us make art for other people or for a purpose or all that stuff. So we're talking about making it for yourself. And my guest is a horticulturist turned freelance editor and a big old geek for most things comic, video game, book, science fiction, and horror related, and is a jack of all / many crafts, but primarily a pencil artist. Welcome. Can you please state your name and your pronouns for us?
Hi, I'm Kharysa Watt. I go with she, her pronouns.
Yay.
I'm excited to be here.
Yay. I'm excited that you're here. Also because we just got together last week and had a proper sit down where we both laid out our entire life stories. And we're like, yes, we've decided we're going to be friends.
I like this human.
Yes. Yeah, it's the best. Yeah, so let's just kind of jump in. So tell me a little bit about your history with creativity. What were you like as a child?
So I always thought of it as I was normal amount of creativity for a child. I know I doodled a lot. I think my mom wrote down in a Christmas letter once of just being like, Kharysa draws me a lot of really cute pictures. I'm like, awesome. So glad to know I've always been this way. But the thing that sticks out the most is in mid-elementary. I had a friend who we were both obsessed with Sailor Moon.
Oh,
and
yes. We love Sailor Moon.
Right. We created our own Sailor Scouts.
Amazing.
So I made Sailor Earth. And
nice.
And I think she made Sailor Sun. It's the only one that comes to mind because we were going with items that weren't used yet. And we drew so many iterations of them. I mean, I might even still have some kicking around, even though I'd be so embarrassed, but I have to remind myself that I was 8.
Right.
Maybe older. And then beyond that, I met more and more friends who were into art, and they kind of not purposefully, but in a very offhanded way, sort of pushed me to be oh, I want to learn how to do, I really like your art. I want to learn how to do my stuff better or improve this or change the way that I do that.
Yeah.
And also spurred on by being a super Saturday morning cartoons kid.
Yes.
And the moment we only had the first 13 channels for so long, low income family.
We never had cable. The only time I had access to cable was going to a friend's house or when we were at my grandma's house visiting, because any other time it was just nope, we got those 12 channels. That's what you're stuck with.
Right. You get this, which on the one hand, at least we had the WB, which
yes,
it's Pokemon, Batman, Spider-Man, X-Men. At least I'm pretty sure Spider-Man and X-Men were on there. I remember watching them as a kid, so I assume somehow that related to Access.
Right.
And Digimon was in there somewhere, but I think that was when we got more channels, which I liked Digimon more than Pokemon.
I loved Digimon. Yes, I also watched it, so it must not have been on cable because I watched it too.
Right, yeah. I'm Anyway, it's not important. When when we were able to get, like, we got more of the channels, and we got like Cartoon Network, and they had Toonami, which was like after school, more cartoons, and that was like I finally got to actually sit down and actively watch Sailor Moon.
Mm-hmm.
And they had like Dragon Ball and Dragon Ball Z and Reboot, which is a really obscure show that I love and nobody else knows about, but I love it nonetheless. And like a bunch of other anime stuff because I got into did the anime train. Yeah, and I actually had there were a couple of manga artists that I still get some of the material that they write, if only because their art was such an inspiration for me and such like a push to improve what I did.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's so funny, especially considering I got really heavily into pencil art, but I was surrounded by tactile crafters. Like my grandmother on my mom's side made historical costumes.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, like big old Renaissance dresses.
Yeah.
And then my grandmother on the other side did a bunch of quilting. We had so many blankets and like some clothing here and there, but neither of them really ever taught us how to do that stuff. Like any of the hand sewing, cross stitching, like material, like machine sewing that I learned from like family friends, which I always thought was kind of odd.
Interesting. Yeah.
But yeah, and I expanded into drawing like baby comics when I was in junior high.
Oh.
And high school, I don't know what started my obsession with stick figures for whatever reason, especially since that wasn't what I was originally drawing, but I did like a bunch of stick figure comics.
Oh, cool.
And it's just like based on like, I think this was still like pre-meme era, but it's just like a bunch of like goofy videos and stuff like that, or funny things that my friends and I said or talked about. And yeah, I've so many.
As you were talking about stick figures, I immediately like had two things that happened in my brain. One was like all these videos that I would watch on like Albino Blacksheep, and
yes,
like came into my head. And then there was also this like video game. It was like one of those I can't remember what it was, like this little game you could play that there was like a stick figure and he would like fall down a hill, and you could like launch him off of things, but then it would just like keep going, and then there'd be like little spurts of blood, and I can't remember what this was, but it was just like basically the stick figure falling down a hill that you could like control where he went. I don't
That sounds vaguely familiar, but I have no idea.
Yeah.
That's so funny. I'm so glad that you know what Albino Blacksheep is.
Yes, my friend and I were very into Albino Blacksheep and watched all of those classic videos.
My brother and I still we still spout off lines from a video that was called Forehead Shave Cut.
Yes! Oh my god. Nobody knows when I say stuff. Like whenever I'm like 12, that's an odd number, isn't it? Like nobody knows what I'm talking about. Oh my god, that makes me so happy.
Yeah, my brother and I will just be, we'll just spout it. We'll be like, haha, I fooled you. The cinnamon was actually basil. Oh my god. You'll now die of basil poisoning.
Oh my god, that makes me so happy. I've never met another person who has watched that except for my friend growing up. Oh my god.
This is the best epiphany ever.
Amazing.
Oh my god, yeah. So many people do not know what that is.
Nope. Hopefully our delight is delight enough for them to keep listening.
I hope so. Now my brain just keeps kind of like, you dodged the bullet, Neo. Now you will die by chainsaw.
It was just the height of random core 90 or early 2000s, just like amazing.
It's so much nonsense, but it just is utterly delightful. Talk about like imperfectionism. Just
Yes, let's just throw the most random things we possibly can. We're gonna animate it terribly and just put it out into the internet.
so yeah, that was that
So
was
stick
my
figure drawings.
beginnings. Yeah, totally got into stick figure drawings. I made a bunch of comics through high school, and it didn't really continue after high school. And I actually, as I progressed through high school, I started producing less, and I got more into a space of where if I couldn't complete something in one sitting, my brain was like, we're not going to bother.
Mm-hmm.
We're just not, like, there's no point. Even if you really want to do it, if you can't sit down and do it all in one go, then just don't do it. And there were a lot of like partially finished drawings that just made me really irritated because I was like, oh, I want to finish this, but I just couldn't get back into it. And yeah, and it just so much dissatisfaction. And for a while, I thought that it had more to, I do still think it has something to do with like having ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think there was a lot of it that was also linked to like that internalized, like, it's a waste of space,
Yes.
uh and like it's not career worthy, that I got from my parents.
Yeah. So were your parents like whenever you'd be doodling, would they like make comments about what you were doing or
So they never really got invested in anything. It was just kind of one of those like, oh, I was a kid, that's like what you do.
mm-hmm.
uh at most I could convince them to get me a sketchbook every now and then, but for the most part I had a bunch of, like, school notebooks. And I remember vividly in junior high having a moment where I, to be fair, like, yeah, it was like one drawing, like in smack in the middle of a notebook. But rather than my mom being like, hey, why don't you use like the space around it to like write your school notes, or even just being like, hey, how about we get you a different book, you can draw on that, like take it to school with you, draw on that, but
Mm-hmm.
I need this to be for schoolwork. But instead it was just, I was wasting space.
Mm.
It was that, yeah, like I was wasting paper in my notebooks.
Mm.
Yeah. And then as far as my dad went, I never really knew where he stood on things. But I do remember very clearly when, like, around the end of high school, kind of, and I'd never talked about being a professional artist. It wasn't really something that I was sure that I wanted to do. Like, it was kind of those like unattainable goals. Like, this would be really cool, but chances are probably not. Especially since at that point, I especially wasn't drawing as much.
Mm-hmm.
And he just out of the blue was essentially like, I don't want you to become a starving artist.
Mm.
And to me, while the logical part of me was like, yeah, okay, like, I know that you're looking out for my financial security, but then the other part was like, okay, so you don't think my stuff is good enough
Right. Yeah, that's
to,
like the subtext there.
yeah, to like be successful, or you don't think that I could make up for it by being passionate about a thing. um
Or that it's worth your time even if it's not making you money.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And further on, I was very lucky in that he paid for my first round of college, going to tech school, which is where I did my horticulture program. And I had to do like just a few electives, because thankfully tech school, they're like, here's like a couple of electives, but it's not as like terrible as community college or universities can be, where they make you spend a lot more money.
Right. Yeah.
And it didn't really matter what I took for these. I just had to fill the space. And it turned out that there was a human life drawing class at my school. And I was like, oh my God, that sounds amazing. I really want to take this. And I was so scared to go up to my dad and ask him, since he was spending the money, like, if I could take this class. And I finally pitched it to him. I'm like, hey, I have to fill an elective. This is a class coming up that I want to take. And he totally was chill with it. He's just like, oh yeah, it's totally fine. And I'm like, I don't understand where you fall on this. But on the other hand, I think because my program was essentially like pushing me in a financially secure like place, it was kind of like, oh, this is just a class.
Right.
It's fine. And I loved that class so much. I still have so many works that I look back on that I absolutely adore. It was my first foray into, um, well, human life drawing. So we actually had like nude models come in
Oh, cool.
and
Yeah.
pose, and it was so cool and just challenging. And actually, it's morphed into a practice that I use nowadays, and I just do it with poses. I don't use it with like actual people, but
Mhm.
I do like quick gesture drawings. Like I pick a pose, I pick a song, and for as long as I'm listening to that song, I can work on that pose.
Oh,
But it's
that's a
all
good
just
idea.
very quick stuff. But once the song is over, I have to move on to the
Okay.
next thing.
We have this idea that everything we do has to be good or have value. This belief leads us to burnout. It can hold us back from creating altogether. But in my Ugly Art 101 course, I break down these restricted beliefs and lead you through exercises that intentionally subvert perfectionism and bring playfulness back into your creative process. You can get the first day absolutely free by going to my website, scribeandsunshine.com, and signing up on the homepage. Join me in my weird, ugly art revolution. Back to the show.
So
What's your reasoning behind the song length? Just so you don't get like hung up on something, or yeah,
exactly. Yeah. It literally is just so I don't keep focusing on the thing, and to practice like it's okay to like leave this as a partially finished thing. Um,
yeah,
but also I get the choice to, I mean, even in the gesture drawing, like I could just do the basic outline, but also I can take the time to like focus on a specific part and like hone in on pieces of like accent different pieces that can still make it look like a whole finished piece,
mm-hmm.
just with like some sketchy outlines. It's just, yeah, to shake it up and just be like, hey, like it's totally it's totally fine if you leave it this way. And like in this case, like I'm just not really giving myself a choice in the matter, which is
Mm-hmm.
kind of nice.
Yeah. That reminds me of like the practice that I do with like my ugly art and being like make this bad on purpose and leave it and like teach your body that it's okay for it to be this way. So like in your case it's like, okay body, it's fine that this is unfinished and it's fine that it is as it is and I'm going to walk away from it. you know.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, and there are some pieces that I'm like, oof, I don't like that, and moving along. But it's the reminding myself, like, hey, but this was a really good practice.
Yeah.
Even in some cases, looking at the thing and being like, that was a really complicated pose, like, but at least you attempted. Now we can move on.
Yeah. Yeah. So when did you realize that you wanted to take your creativity into your own hands and worry less about what the people in your life thought?
I feel like I'm still kind of struggling with that, actually.
Yeah.
Uh, if only because, especially in the last, I don't know, good handful of years, a lot of drawings that have come about have been based on like somebody else being excited about a thing. Shout out to my best friend who gets invested in a lot of things, and I just kind of like join her for the ride. Very gratefully, and it like I've turned out a lot of things that I really absolutely adore. Uh, but it definitely like started with a bit of other uh motivation coming in, and so I'm still working on finding a lot of my own core motivations to kind of push myself in that realm. But yeah, especially because I really fell off like the drawing wagon for a while. It'd be like very intermittent. Maybe every few months I would draw something,
Mm-hmm.
and usually for myself, but I'd get dissatisfied really easily.
Yeah.
Well, that was the thing too, is when I was little, most of the stuff I did for myself, and I never really thought about it that way. But it was funny to kind of it's funny to look back and see like this fluctuation of like, oh yeah, like I was doing everything for myself, and then it was, doing stuff for I was in a girls leadership group, and we had like competitions and stuff like that, so we could do like arts and stuff for competitions. And then and then it was still like doing comics and stuff, and that was for myself, but then also was kind of doing it for friends. And then high school was a lot of like the stick figure comics were definitely partly for myself, but also like I did them at school, or showed them off to friends. um it was a whole thing. I
Yeah.
love it so much. um
That's such a fun like that's such a fun part of the process though, is when you do get to share your work with people who appreciate it.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. And I feel like maybe that's what I hit when I got out of high school, of just being like, maybe like that might have been why I was so sparse, is because I was doing these pieces, but it wasn't for anybody, and I also didn't really feel like I could always show it off to somebody and have like the same enthusiasm, or have any enthusiasm, because I again, like I didn't get it. I didn't get it from my parents. My brother also does some drawing, and a lot of times like we could like kind of bounce off of one another. um but yeah, it's just me floating out there. And I sit in the unfortunate spot of like essentially the only way that my artistic stuff gets shared by either of my parents, um is if it well, mostly my mom, is if it benefits them in some
Mm.
way. um Unfortunately, and usually it's just like, oh hey, like look what my kid did, and I'm like, cool, but you never cared before.
Right.
Or
Like
like
it was like she only cared, or they only cared when it was good, quote unquote good for like their standards, or when they thought that it would like make them look good in some way, of like, this is like, look what my kid can do, you know?
yeah, exactly. And that's, I mean, on the flip side, I don't know that like 100%, but it is always how it feels.
Mm.
And because it's definitely not like, it's not all the time. It's just this like every once in like a hiccup or something, I'd be like, oh, look what my kid does. Just like, I do a lot more than that, and I have for a long time. But
Yeah.
yeah, it just that like inconsistent. Like, it'd be nice to know, like, obviously it doesn't have to be all the time, but it'd be nice to know that I could come up to you and not, like my dad with the schooling thing, like not be so worried that I was going to get shot down for taking the class, just knowing that like, hey, like he appreciates the fact that I do art enough that like this will definitely not be a problem, as opposed to just being like, oh my god, there's no way that he's going to let me take this one class.
Yeah. And like, not even just like sharing with people, but the fact that like what you mentioned about the notebook and like wasting space, if you're only pulling what you find beneficial out of this art practice, then you're kind of like crumpling the spirit of this kid who like enjoys all of the aspects of the art process.
Yeah.
And you're not encouraging that spirit to flourish. You're making it feel threatened, and like, if I don't do this a certain way, then I won't get praise from my parents, or I won't be able to take this class because I'm not good enough according to these standards.
Yeah. And I mean, and especially as a kid, like what, maybe other than like the jury of your friends, you don't really always have a lot of other standards to go off of except your parents.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, like there's a little part of me that I'm like, go young me for sticking to it for so long.
Yeah.
Despite like no, and I think part of that was like I had a lot of friend validation, I think enough to kind of like carry me through.
Mm-hmm.
But oh no, there was something that I was going to elaborate on that you touched on, but now it just flew away.
It might come back. Carousel brain.
It might, fingers crossed. Oh, I think I was just wrapping it back around to perfectionism, essentially from the point of like, especially if, because I can't always remember like what pieces were lauded, but chances are they were probably like completed things. So this idea between like, if you can't complete a thing, then it won't be worth showing off. It won't be worth,
Mm-hmm.
yeah, validation. And so what's the point
Yeah.
of even putting it down, despite, yeah, not even acknowledging like, hey, but it's really good practice. The repetition is good. Like just trying challenging things.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's so you shared a post this morning that was like exactly this. Like, we know that in order to be good at playing an instrument, you have to practice. But when it comes to writing or art, it's just like, no, you're just supposed to be good at it immediately. And if you're not, then you need to stop doing it forever. How dare you have even started in the first place? Like, that's what our
Exactly.
brains say.
Yeah. Oh my gosh. And so another editor had shared that, and I was like, oh my gosh, yes.
Yeah.
It's so, yeah, it's so perfect. It's so baffling, and I don't know how we get in these spaces of just expecting perfection in such specific areas. I mean, you could even relate it back to editing, where like I can't imagine many of us editors are not hard on ourselves about like, but I need to be really good at this right now
Yeah.
because this is the sort of like expectation of final product that we need to be putting out. Therefore, like we have to have all our ducks in a row.
Right. Yeah. That's the expectation. We're the perfect people. We're here to
Right?
make things perfect. And like, no, we're not. And we need to stop having this expectation on ourselves that we are. And like, authors need to not have that expectation too, because like, editors are humans and humans make mistakes. And even books that are edited by 6+ people, like, there will still be a typo that makes its way through.
Yeah, yeah. I think even part of that is also just public education in general of, because I certainly used to be that way of, if I'm like reading a thing and I come across an error, just being like, wow, like there's a typo in here. And it just, yeah, thinking back now and just being like, man, if they just managed to get one typo in here, brava.
Yeah, that's good.
Like the book that I'm reading right now, I just came across, it's like 3/4 the way into the book, and I just happened to notice I was like, oh, this is missing a quotation at the end of the.
Yeah.
If anything, I was like, I don't think I've ever noticed a missing quote before. missing words or misspelled words, sure, but a quote is fascinating.
That's pretty interesting. So I am curious, did you end up having like a conversation with your family, or did you end up just like continuing to do your own thing and like not, and if this is too personal a question, you can obviously just tell me and I will cut it, no problem. But
That's fine.
yeah, I'm just curious because like as of now, it seems like you're still like you still do it. You're still exploring your creativity and trying new things, and so I'm curious if you ever have to kind of stand up for yourself in that way these days.
Yeah, I've really had to push myself back into a lot of these areas, and with drawing it's been especially helpful, which on the one hand I'm like, yes, do what you can to like, yeah, like do your art for yourself and make it yours. Though admittedly there's a lot of me getting back into art lately that again has been based on friends, like passion pushing forward
Mm-hmm.
sort of thing. And I actually my best friend and I, it didn't really start out as a planned thing, but I send her progress photos now. Like
Oh, cool.
I'll do like a rough draft and I'll just be like, this is what I'm working on right now. And just slowly as I go through, which honestly, it's really nice to kind of have that visible record of like, hey, this started as like two circles and now you have this.
Yeah.
So it's been like, that has been really nice and validating. Um, Still has the outward component, but it's been it's been really helpful on a, at least on a drawing standpoint. A lot of other crafts I've kind of had to push myself into, if anything, because I'm like, I am interested in this, and just having to push back against the perfectionism of like, it doesn't have to be perfect.
Yeah.
It can be really messy. I've been having that with like knitting.
Yeah.
Like I taught myself how to knit. I My first scarf looks ridiculous because I ended up adding like 15 extra stitches somehow.
I would always end up either losing stitches, like dropping stitches, or adding more. Yeah.
I just, by the time I got like halfway through my scarf, I was like, why is this double the size that it is at the other end?
Right.
Um and so far as talking to, I have not talked to my family, or at least no, my parents about this, mostly because um at least with my mom I have a bit of a complicated relationship, and so yeah, I haven't had the opportunity. I guess technically I have kind of talked to her like in a letter that I've sent, but we haven't actually like talked it out
Mm-hmm.
since. And with my dad, we haven't discussed that specifically. Um, but over the years, he's gotten more like acknowledging of the fact that I do like, it's sometimes it feels really complicated where it's just like, I'm acknowledging the fact that you are very creative and you do all these things like here and there, but I'm not acknowledging it all the time. So it just kind of like comes up in spurts of like, oh, hey, you should like help work on this thing because you're creative. I'm like, oh,
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah,
Or
I've
like,
gotten that a few times. Like, oh, you're creative. You know how to do things. Do this. It's like, that's not what I do, but okay.
I'm like, oh, well, I mean, like I can come and help, but I can't be any sort of like artistic director because I don't know what I'm doing. Like,
Right.
I don't know what you're trying to do here, but I will come help paint your haunted house, but I do not have any special effects painting experience, so don't it like, I'm going to be using a lot of pictures and trying my best.
Yeah.
Uh but yeah, so it's still relatively unresolved. But yeah, a lot of it has just been me pushing myself back into more creative spaces, which has been nice. Still a struggle, but it's been nice.
Yeah. Yeah. Hey all, it's Lauren to interrupt this episode briefly to talk about my dear friend, perfectionism. I was held back by my perfectionism for years. I didn't do so many things that I desired to do because I didn't think I'd be any good at them, and therefore I shouldn't do them. And this is something we all do. And I've created a workshop that's an accumulation of all the work and tools that I put into healing from perfectionism and getting back in touch with my creativity. If you struggled with this like I did, and still do from time to time, you can check out my Creating Through Perfectionism workshop at ko-fi.com/scribesunshine/shop and use the discount code UGLY, that's UGLY, to get 20% off of the workshop and workbook. Perfectionism doesn't go away, but we can train ourselves to work with it and to tear down, or maybe walk around, the seemingly immovable wall that keeps us from taking risks and moving forward. Back to the show. That's great. So like, so as you're pushing yourself into those creative spaces, what do you do when those feelings of perfectionism start to kind of creep in?
I think in like not so fancy terms, I just kind of try to push it down. Unfortunately, sometimes my brain can be like an all or nothing thing. So either we're out, we quit, we walk away, or yeah, I just push it and it's just kind of one of those like it doesn't matter. Like just keep doing the thing. Especially when it comes to drawing, I have to be, thankfully I've gotten really good at being very aware of like if I've erased a thing like 3 times already, I have to walk away.
Yeah.
Because at that point I'm just like I'm not satisfied and I need to give myself some space before I come back to a specific part, because otherwise I'm going to get frustrated, and then if I keep making the same marks on the paper, I'm going to like indent the paper.
Right.
And so it'll like the the lines I don't want will still be indented in the paper.
Right.
If I don't back off.
Yeah.
But yeah, but more often than not, especially if I become frustrated, for me, sometimes I can really associate emotions with a thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want stuff like irritation or anger getting associated with a piece that I'm working on. So that's another reason why it's just like, okay, I'm going to take a break, because if you get upset about this, then you're always going to have that stirring when you come back.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I've never thought of that before, but like, yeah, whenever I'm really frustrated with something, like that piece is like, it's like the emotions glom on to whatever you've been working on, and it's just like, nope, you're never going to be satisfied with this because you just like dwelled in that frustration for too long in relation to this piece, and like that's just how you're going to feel about it.
yeah, exactly. And rarely, especially if it's a trouble spot, I also try not to like settle for a thing, because sometimes I can just get so like mad that I just settle on a thing, but I'm like, no, but then every time you come back, you're gonna look at this thing and you're gonna be so upset.
Yeah.
And so annoyed, and it's just like, but I want to love this.
Yeah.
I want to enjoy it, like even if it remains incomplete, I still want to enjoy or get the other emotions that I was supposed to get out of it.
An excellent idea. Yeah. Taking breaks has been like a big thing for me too. Like, especially when you just get so in your head about something and you just have to get out of your head, and then you come back to it with fresh eyes and you're like, oh, okay, I see what I need to do here. At least for me. Yeah.
I also, even better if I can find songs to associate with a piece.
Oh,
That will
that's cool.
drive me through. They're actually, I have a lot of pieces of art that literally just have like the title of a song. Um, because that was probably what I was listening to this song like on repeat.
That's so cool.
Cause I just, yeah, I'm like, I don't know how many people this may or may not happen to, but yeah, like I just, it's like I completely like empathize into a song, and it just
Yeah.
like all of the emotions just fill me and then like filter out
Cool.
into, yeah, yeah.
So how do you think creatives can start to kind of turn that focus on themselves and our own desires, and instead of focusing on either what our parents want us to be doing or what our peers think we should be doing or what we think society wants us to do at large? Like, how do we turn that focus inward, and start to kind of explore what we actually like to do?
feels like such Feels like such a tough question that should be so simple,
Mm,
because it should be so easy to be like, but just do it for yourself. But then if you have like issues with self, it can be
yeah.
really hard. Like, I don't deserve to enjoy what I'm doing, or the like, I think really the most important thing is that, to me, um, because I'm essentially such like a passion driven person, like most of the stuff that I've produced that I love the most were, even if it was still kind of that like somebody else was passionate about it and I kind of like joined along, it
Mhm.
still created a passion inside of me and led me to produce this thing. And it's such a, drawing is really a cathartic thing for me, like even the simple stuff. um and yeah, I suppose, I mean, in a sense it's like you deserve to be able to enjoy the things that you create. You there's It's funny because I just wrote down a quote this morning on my little whiteboard here, and it says, be yourself, everyone else is taken.
Yeah, I love that one.
And yeah, it's just kind of one of those like, if somebody else wants something created, they can do it themselves. Like, it's not, the onus isn't on you. You don't owe anybody anything. But, and while you don't like owe yourself anything, like you deserve to be able to enjoy what you do, especially when it comes to art. Like, of all of the things, because art is such a personal thing
Yeah.
that, to me, it just comes from a very unique place. And yeah, you deserve to be able to like soak up all of that and enjoy it and not be frustrated and not let anything taint that. And so if there's anything that is making you feel bad about your art, or judged, um chances are it's probably like, it's one of those like, it's not you, it's them sort of thing, and taking a step back.
Totally.
um yeah, yeah,
Yeah, I love that overall message of like, you deserve to make what you want to make. And I think that's like one of the hardest things to take to heart, because we don't always know, like, one, what we deserve in this life. It's
yeah,
really hard to like get that across, that like, hey, you actually deserve good things. Guess what? Um
yep,
and then
yep.
also like that your uniqueness should be brought out into the world in whatever form you want to bring it out in. Um, and like creativity is like one of the best ways you can do that is that's uniquely you. That's how your brain functions. It's what those connections make, and what you bring out into the world. And like, no matter what it is, no matter what other people think about it, that still deserves to exist, and you deserve to enjoy it.
Yeah, because there are billions of people out there making billions of things, but none of those things are yours. And I feel like it kind of goes hand in hand with the whole, like, you're never going to be able to reach or please everybody. So the least you can do is make yourself happy with this one thing that I'm going to say, like, you essentially have control over. I would like to make a personal note to my brain that there's so many things that look such a way in my brain that I would love to have on paper just that way, but here we are.
Right. So true.
Right. But essentially, like, something that you have control over and you can do what you want with. They're your messages, they're your feelings. You can share yourself with the world, even though vulnerability is hard. I get it.
Yep, vulnerability is real hard. Yep.
So hard.
Yes. Amazing. Well, thank you so much. This was such a great conversation. I loved it. I'm just thrilled that someone else has seen Forehead Shave Cut.
I know. I've not been able to stop thinking about that.
Amazing. Okay. So final thing is, have you made anything ugly this week? And if so, what was it?
I thought that I had, and now I'm like, I don't think I did.
That's fine. I can go first and let you think about it if you want.
Yeah. You go first.
Okay. So I was having a bit of an existential crisis the other day, as one does. And so I was like feeling very like angsty about just like the state of the world and my place in the world, you know, as it happens. Anyway, but I decided to just like start scribbling and being angsty on paper. So I started off just writing like nothing matters across the page. And then I just like made all of these like black scribbles all around the page. And then I like looked at it, I thought it was done, and then I was just like, maybe I'll just add some color. So I added like some blue highlights to the scribbles and just like started decorating the scribbles. And then there was like a little tiny blank spot at the bottom of the page. And then I was just like, okay, I can make this a little more hopeful now. And then I said, so it said nothing matters. And then at the bottom in blue, it said, but I can add color. It was nice.
I love that.
So it's a big scribbly mess with a very like hopeful message.
That's so cute. Though I do shout out to the fact that you could also be like nothing matters in a bad way, or also like nothing matters.
Yes, there's a what is that artist? I'm gonna have to link it in the show notes. But there's this artist that has this little red blob that slime. Is it slimy?
That sounds right.
I think it's slimy oddity. That's what it is.
Yeah, because I think you mentioned it on a previous podcast.
I think so too. Yeah. Slimy oddity. And there's like this picture of this very sad looking blob looking out one window that says nothing matters. And then there's like the red, happy, like slimy blob looking out the window with like rainbows and stuff in the background. It's like nothing matters. It's like so sweet.
Exactly. It's just like you can go two totally different ways with this.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't think I made any ugly art since the last time we did the Come As You Art thing.
What did you make then?
I made a snake that had a lot of different colors. I went at it with so many different colors, and I also discovered that I have a pencil that like it has 4 different colors in the tip.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, so I was just doing a lot of like maneuvering the way, because then it would change all the colors.
Yeah, that's cool.
And like it was in like field of flowers. It's so funny when we do those sessions because I have to, like the first time we did it, I had like started out with flowers and stuff like that. And part of my brain was like, no, this is supposed to be ugly. Stop doing it. And so I had to like, the other half of my brain had to step in and be like, you know what? Just do what you want.
Yeah.
It's fine.
Yep. That's what
if
it's all
this is
about.
where we're going, just do the thing. And then I like added the snail and like written a bunch of stuff. But I am really excited for this Thursday.
Yeah.
Where I will definitely be doing ugly art.
Yes. Anybody listening wants to join me at the end of the month. Each month we come together and we make ugly art at Come As You Art, and that is very fun. So there's that.
It is very, very fun. Everybody should come.
Amazing. So where can people find you and how can they support you? Tell us the things.
Yeah, they can find me on Instagram, I guess technically, and Facebook. Though I'm not very active on Facebook like I am on. I'm more active in my stories right now. I do not have a lot of posts, but you can find me on Kaylyx.editing. It's spelled Kaylyx .editing is the handle. And yeah, that's all my editing stuff. I do also have like my website, kaylyxediting.com, that you can check out. And I hope to have more stuff soon. I'm still baby business person working on that.
Yay, baby business.
Yay.
Cool. Well, thanks so much for joining me, Kharysa. And I will talk to you soon.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
Yeah. And thank you, everybody, for listening. Keep it ugly. The Ugly Podcast is created by me, Lauren Alexander of Scribe and Sunshine. It is produced and sort of edited also by me, and written and directed by absolutely nobody. If you like the podcast, be sure to rate and leave a review on your preferred platform and share with the creative people in your life. If you're interested in learning more about what I do, head to scribeandsunshine.com to learn more about my Ugly Art 101 course, my perfectionism workshop, my editing services, and the Writer's Helm, which is an online community for writers co-captained by myself and Gabby Goodlow. As always, keep it ugly.